I'm Brittany. This is Chuaning, and welcome to Gaywatch, where we watch and read gay things. Hi! We're reading Volume 7 of Erha. We actually finished that volume this week, and which I guess is a good thing, because kind of a lot's happening, but we'll get to that here in a second. Hello, we read for typically a couple of hours. Pardon me. I have a lingering cough from being sick. I'm fine. It's just annoying. But that'll be, if you were around for the days when the coughing thing was a real serious problem, this is not going to be like that. Otherwise, I just wouldn't have had streams this week. So it'll be all right. It'll only be like mildly annoying here, hopefully. We usually read for a couple of hours, but today we are reading a little bit longer, and also on Thursday, because we want to finish the volume this week, and in order to do that, we have to get through 60 pages instead of the typical 40 to 50. So we're in it for a longer haul today. Whatever that means. I'm sure the rereaders are giggling to themselves right about now. We are also giving away the first book in the Captive Prince trilogy. I'll be doing that at the break. I will track down the names of the people who have submitted for the giveaway, and then I will announce the winner when we come back from the midpoint break. If you have no idea what Captive Prince is, you should if you're a fan of Erha. Just so you know. I know I don't usually talk about it on here. You may have never heard me said this before, but if you're into Erha, you should look into Captive Prince. That's a thing that you should be aware of. So grabbing volume 7 because we're terribly excited to get into it today. What with Tish and June being back, or here, returned, reborn. He's present in the room now. And we're on page 243 for chapter 233, which is called "This Venerable One Can Change the Title If He Wants." Take that. Okay. Far be it from me to argue with Tish and June. Okay. The storm of masked, black-garbed cultivators charged, diving at the wounded below like gulls quarreling over a meal. Mo-Run realized at once what was going on. To the former Emperor Taishan-jun, it could not be clearer that these people were under control of the Zhenlong chess formation. But the perfection and strength of these pawns were a far cry from Xu Shuanglin's pathetic attempts. There was no way they could face off with this man. Mo-Run turned in horror and howled at the unwitting cultivators behind him. "Run!" He clamped one hand around Chu Waning's wrist and reached out with the other for Jiang Shi, who was kneeling on the ground. He never stopped shouting, his pupils like pinpricks. "Run! Go! Now! Get off the soul summoning platform! You can't stay here! Don't try to fight! You'll lose!" He didn't have to repeat himself. As soon as the black-garbed pawns landed and brandished their swords, everyone could sense their terrifying power. The cultivators surged like a tide toward the mouth of the tunnel. At their head was the cowardly Master Ma. He reached the stone doors that led to the Dragon Soul pool and froze. People behind him piled up as they skidded to a stop. "What's going on?" someone shouted. "Keep moving." Master Ma's reply came out as a terrified sob from the door at the pitch-black end of the tunnel. It's closed." "What do you mean it's closed?" Hua Binan closed the doors behind him. Master Ma's legs wobbled, and he collapsed to his knees. His face was wet with tears, and his body shook like a leaf. "This is Mount Jiao. Without the blood of the Nangong clan, once it closes, it will never open again." "Nangong says gone," But what about Nangong Lu? Someone anxiously cried. Isn't that pawn father of his still on the mountain? Where is he? He's in the Great Hall. We thought he was useless. No one bothered to bring him. Despair filled the tunnel. The eerie darkness chilled them to the bone. What do we do? Go back and try our luck out there? The news hadn't yet traveled. There were still more trying to come in, and many more who couldn't fit. They could only turn back and steel themselves to fight off those mysterious pawns from the rift. In the darkness, Huang Xiaoyue hollered, "Let me through! I can open the door!" I don't believe a single word that comes out of your mouth, sir. Open the door? How? Aren't you two just generally disappointing and pathetic? He shoved cultivators out of his way like a massive fish on its migratory journey, pushing through until he stood before the door. Master Ma looked up through teary eyes. Huang Daozhong, he asked blankly. Move aside, let me at it. But your name is Huang, you're not a Nangong. Huang Xiaoyue ignored him and rushed to the door. Thank heavens he'd kept that bit of Nangong's blood. He'd saved it in order to open the treasure chamber and specifically enchanted it to keep it from congealing, but the spell only lasted a short time. He waved his sleeves, suddenly grateful this disaster had happened so quickly. Hopefully the blood would still work. Don't you hate it when the worst person you know is helpful? Huang Xiaoyue pressed his wizened old hand, are we sure? To the broken stone. The distant voice of the demon dragon echoed out from the tunnel. Who comes? His heart pounded. 7th generation descendant of Rufeng sect, Nangong Se, pays his respects. There was silence. Then the dragon rumbled, Wang Li bids master farewell. As the stone doors lowered, Huang Xiaoyue ran out of the tunnel, followed by the disciples of Jiangdong Hall. Master Ma scurried up and raised his hand in panic. Wait for me, I'm coming! He found the point of a sword held to his chest. Master Ma froze. He slowly looked up. Huang Daozhong, what's the meaning of this? Huang Xiaoyue sneered. I threw in my lot with the sage up there. If I let you leave, who's to say you won't come to this humble one seeking revenge? I'm an old man. I can't handle such excitement. No, Master Ma stuttered in terror. What are you doing? Don't mess around. Let's talk things over properly. We're all businessmen here. Huang Daozhong, quick, let me out, and the goods of Taobao Estate will always go to Jiangdong Hall at half price. No, quarter price. Malice filled the creases of Huang Xiaoyue's lined face. Half price? Once I hold the treasures of Rufeng Sect's Mount Jiao, what will I care for your worldly goods? What the hell is Taobao Estate to me? He extended a hand and gave Master Ma a sharp shove backward. Ma Yun fell to the floor, bringing down everyone around him in a haphazard pile. By the time they staggered to their feet, Huang Xiaoyue and the rest of Jiangdong Hall stood on the other side of the doorway. Greed, envy, and spiteful glee flickered across Huang Xiaoyue's face as he pulled the door's mechanism. Behind him, the members of Jiangdong Hall wore expressions of smug conceit. Some even dared to say it out loud. Serves you right for looking down on us. Our Huang Daozhong hasn't done anything wrong, yet he's endured your criticisms this entire journey. This is blood he preserved at risk to his own life. Why should he use it to help you? The stone door rumbled shut again, plunging the cultivators inside the tunnel into a suffocating darkness. There was a ringing silence. Finally, one female cultivator buried her face in her hands and began sobbing. Her grief was contagious. The cultivators had lost all faith and courage. They could not go forward, yet dared not turn back. Zuza, I don't want to die yet, Shifu. Dad, let's turn around and fight to the death. It's better than dying stuck in here. Their voices bounced off the walls. Suddenly they heard a voice that had been silent for some time. It shook slightly, yet was iron with determination. Let me. The ashen face Master Ma turned, trembling, to see light flare in the tunnel. His eyes widened in shock. Mozongsha. Mo Run's unreadable features were illuminated by the flames in his palm. He waded through the crowd and came to a stop before the sealed door. So gagged I had to cough up along there. What? I think now's a good time to pour the rest of the lemonade from my good friend Mike. Mo-Run said nothing. People were holding off the pawns at the mouth of the tunnel, but they wouldn't last long. Those black-clad warriors would break through soon enough. As they'd climbed the mountain over and over again, Mo-Run had almost stepped in when Nangongsa faced danger. But he'd never succeeded in following through. He thought fate had taken pity on him, that it would let him escape this one calamity, escape all these watching eyes. But now he was trapped. There was no path of escape left. Mozongsha. He didn't glance at Master Ma as he took out the short silver blade he wore at his belt. It sliced across his palm, filling his hand with blood. By now, Shuemeng and Shui Jingyong had both arrived. Chu Wanning had also come to a stop behind Mo-Run. Shui Jingyong asked in confusion, Runner, what are you doing? It's useless. Mount Zhao will only obey a Nangong descendant. Your blood won't work. Mo-Run didn't turn. His bleeding hand was shaking, but he still reached out, still viciously smeared it against the stone. It was so cold against his palm. He closed his eyes. The voice of the demon dragon Wang Li echoed in the darkness once again. Who comes? Mo-Run swallowed. Before the crowd's watchful eyes, within the stifling silence, Mo-Run slowly and carefully answered. 7th generation descendant of Rufeng sect. Shuemeng paled. He took a stumbling step backward, shaking his head. What? I echo the sentiment! What? What? What is that? Wait, what? Shui Jingyong's expression was even uglier than his son's. His round eyes were fixed on Mo-Run's tall, black-clad silhouette. How could this be? He murmured. Every syllable was like the point of a knife. Knowing he would bleed, knowing he couldn't take it back, that he could make no other choice, Mo-Run softly spoke the rest of the words. Mo-Run, Mo-Wei-Yu pays his respects. Impossible! Shuemeng shouted, eyes scarlet. But the door opened. Wang Li's voice, as faint as smoke, pierced their eardrums like a gleaming dagger. Wang Li bids master farewell. Ron-er. Shui Jingyong was stupefied into silence. Chu Wanning, too, was completely at a loss. He grabbed Shui Jingyong's arm and looked forward. The stone door rumbled and slowly lowered into the ground, and the orange gleam of the Dragon Soul pool poured into the darkness. Mo-Run stood in the doorway with his back to them. His dark silhouette so hazy, he seemed scarcely real. Mo-Run, how did you open it? What do you mean, 7th generation descendant of Rufeng sect? How? Shuemeng was crazed with fear. How are you related to the Nangong clan? Aren't you? Mo-Run paused in that eerie light. Everyone, please go through. Mo-Run! Shuemeng's voice climbed in a piercing wail. Mo-Run's head turned ever so slightly. He looked as if he wanted to speak, but he never did. Nor did he stop or hesitate. He walked forward, the light flickering around his broad silhouette until it consumed him at the end of the tunnel. The rest of the cultivators of the other great sects pushed forward with all the desperation of fish out of a broken net. In this violent tidal wave, in the escape that resembled the rush of carp in a river, Moran walked alone. He didn't turn. He was too afraid. He saw Yawangshi, still in the hall near the Dragon Soul pool. He went to her and lifted her over his shoulder to bring her out of this place. It didn't have to be Nangongsa who jumped into the pool and offered up his life to the dragon. It could have been him. Moran hadn't known it was possible to wrest Mount Jiao from Shu Shuanglin's control like that, but even so, he couldn't be sure. What if he had known? Would he have chosen to die in Nangongsa's stead? He'd lived 2 lifetimes, eking out an existence under the weight of his guilt. Nangongsa was in his 20s. He wasn't even halfway through his life when he'd become ash, leaving nothing behind. In some rational part of his mind, Moran knew Nangongsa deserved to remain in the world far more than he did. But it was only human to cling to life. What the fuck is going on? Right? How are we like half brothers, half related? Are we? Hang on. I just I'm not. My brain is my. I don't. I can no longer form sentences that are not specifically given to me by Meat Bun. That's where I'm at right now. How we doing? How's everybody doing? Are we okay? I don't think we are. I'm not. A shriek from behind him. The monsters are catching up with us. How could that be? Moran whirled around. The stone had closed again after the last wave exited the tunnel. There was no possible way for those pawns to open it, unless... His face went white. Unless there was someone of Nangong blood among them. In the chaos of his mind, he saw that mysterious black rift again, and recalled the 3rd forbidden technique, the space-time gate of life and death. A freezing cold seemed to crawl up from his feet and coil around his body. Could the masked man be... No, there was no way. Absolutely not. It would be too much. Even in the past life, no one had managed such a thing. Who could possibly have managed it? Thankfully, Mei Han Shui had come up beside him. Moran passed Yawangshi into his arms and rushed in the opposite direction of the crowd, eyes flashing with frantic light. Moran! Run air! Shui Meng and Shui Jingyong shouted to him in the tide of people, but Moran didn't turn. He truly didn't know how he could face these two. No secret could stay buried forever. In that regard, both lifetimes were the same. I am going to deep throat and swallow this microphone. Status update for you. Someone grabbed his arm, and Moran whipped around. Shizun? You can't go that way, Chu Wanning said. I'll hold them off. You're the only one who can activate the arrays on Mount Jiao. You need to stay with the group and make sure they get to safety. Moran stared back at him. Go. The black-garbed man was stepping out of the tunnel, those masked cultivators marching behind him. Hurry, Chu Wanning snapped. Take them and go. Regardless of the uncertainty and unease tearing into Moran's heart, he had no choice but to retreat with everyone else. Even the struggling Shui Meng was dragged away by Shui Jingyong. In the end, only Chu Wanning remained in the hall with the Dragon Soul pool as those mysterious cultivators streamed in, gradually filling the room with their numbers. The turbid liquid in the pool bubbled, throwing its orange light onto the cold stone walls. Chu Wanning stood alone. Sparks crackled along Tianwen's length and reflected in his knife-like eyes. He watched that unknown man who'd come to a stop inside the chamber. Through the heavy mask, that man looked back, watching him in unmoving silence. One of the black-clad cultivators behind him, more excitable than the rest, shouted, "You think you're enough to stop us? In your dreams, come, I'll experience your skills myself." He sprang at Chu Wanning. Before this impatient man could leap even a foot into the air, their black-garbed leader grabbed his neck and yanked him out of it. "Your Majesty!" The man ignored him. Eyes never leaving Chu Wanning, he tightened his grip until the veins popped on his hand. He squeezed until that agitator's neck snapped with a crack, then tossed him aside. Chu Wanning paled. This man would kill his own. "Who are you to experience Chu Zongsha's skills?" the man drawled, stepping toward Chu Wanning. No one behind him dared move again. Holding Tianwen out before him, Chu Wanning spoke firmly. "Who are you?" The man stopped. He stood just a few paces from Chu Wanning, something unspeakable shining in his eyes. Finally, his laughter rang through the chamber. "After so long, this venerable one hadn't thought the first thing you'd say would be so cold." "Do I know you?" "Oh, you don't recognize me?" "Chu Wanning, you've always been callous." The man stepped forward again and kept walking. Chu Wanning's nature was viciously stubborn. He would never retreat. The man stepped right up to him, presumptuously, dangerously close. A chilling light flickered in Chu Wanning's palm. He raised it up to strike with the lightning speed of a lifetime of practice, but the man grabbed his wrist as easily as drawing a breath. "You know, I've experienced this technique of yours many times." The man bent down and stared into Chu Wanning's face, absorbing every detail with naked greed. "But you seem to have forgotten." Chu Wanning felt hair rise on the back of his neck. He'd never been one to fear a stronger opponent, but that gaze was impossibly awful and complex, as if it hid shocking truths and worse secrets. "Who are you?" "Do you need this venerable one to remind you?" The man's grip on him was so tight that Chu Wanning was powerless against it. "The first time you used this technique on me, I was 16. You were teaching me hand-to-hand defense. You told me it was an attack that looked simple but was hard to learn, and that I should apply myself to the task and not slack off." I'm lightheaded. Chu Wanning's eyes Chu Wanning's eyes widened as he stared in disbelief. There was mirth in the man's eyes, which were lit by a devilish gleam. "The second time you used it was during our final battle. Your strike caught me off guard and injured me badly." With an uncompromising strength, he dragged Chu Wanning's hand to his heart. There was no heartbeat under Chu Wanning's palm, as if this man were a corpse. What the fucking fuck is that supposed to mean? Who are you?" "Patience," the man whispered, savoring each syllable before sweetly feeding it into Chu Wanning's ears. That is one of the most fucked up lines of description I've ever heard. Where's My pen! There it is. That's on page 252, in case anyone, yeah. They were even closer now, his lips almost brushing Chu Waning's face. The third time you tried this was in my bed. I wanted to fuck you, but you said you'd had enough. You refused. He moved slowly but inexorably, his hand bruising Chu Waning's wrist as he dragged Chu Waning's hand down his chest and abdomen. Until it rested on something unmistakably intimate. There's no way he doesn't figure it out. There's no way he doesn't figure it out by touch. Which should be the most absurd thing to ever happen. However, it's only absurdly perfect when you think about it. That this is how Chu Waning fucking finds out. Chu Waning flushed and yanked back his hand as if stung, struggling even harder. The man easily dispelled each strike, as if he knew each of Chu Waning's attacks. He brought Chu Waning into his arms. "What do I do, Chu Waning?" he whispered, his tone itself a provocation. "This venerable one planned to kill and destroy you. So many years have passed. You've changed, and so have I. But now that I have you in front of me, now that I breathe in your scent, I still get hard so quickly. Get your hands off of me." Chu Waning had never imagined a confrontation like this. His face flushed and paled in turn, as if he might faint from sheer anger. But he couldn't wrest himself free no matter how he tried. The man was like an inescapable trap, sticky as spider silk. He ensnared Chu Waning, arms tight around his body. In front of all those pawns, he pulled Chu Waning into his arms with a brutal, domineering strength, into an embrace so close and clinging. So hard it hurts. "I'll kill you." Amused, the man smiled and let go. Chu Waning attacked with murderous intent, his movements swift and vicious, aiming for the kill. Cloak flapping, the man swiftly retreated. He glided like a paper kite and landed safely on the stone a few lengths away, but his mask was not so lucky. It broke beneath Chu Waning's strike and shattered on the ground. The man stood in the shadows, face still hidden within the depths of his hood. He sighed. "Your terrible temper hasn't changed a bit." Oh, we really needed art of this. Yeah, thanks. "Still ready to kill at the drop of a hat. But Chu Waning, Chu Zongsha." He crooked his fingers, and a streak of black flew toward him from behind like a gale of dark smoke. He caught it handily. Chu Waning saw it was the blade that had appeared at the Xuanyuan Pavilion auction, one of the blood-soaked holy weapons collected by Xu Shuanglin. The man caressed Bugui and spoke calmly, in tones of utmost malevolence. "Do you really have the heart to kill me?" He looked up. The hood fell back. It was as if a pail of ice water had been dumped over Chu Waning's head. He was engulfed in freezing cold. His ears rang. He couldn't feel a thing. In that shadowed chamber, the man's features were handsome, his face pale, and his smile curved with wicked obsession. He was a calamity, a demon. He grinned, baring white teeth. Emperor Tishanjun. Moran, Moeyu. Bugui slid from its sheath, its glare illuminating his eyes, so dark they looked purple. Taeshanjun smiled like a vengeful ghost, a predator opening its fanged maw. Here to experience Shizun's skills for myself. That's the end of the chapter. So I knew we were in the middle of it when we had to stop last time. And yet I didn't expect that the first chapter that we picked up on did all of this. This feels surreal. Doesn't feel like it's happening. Here's the art. There's the art. That's the art of Taeshanjun revealing his identity to Chu Wanning. That's what's happening right now. We're on we're on page 257 for chapter 234, which is called The Emperor Returns. Like, we knew, but hey. I'm reconfiguring. Okay. I just simply don't know what to say, so I'm gonna keep reading. Sure. At the foot of Mount Jiao, all the cultivators, with the exception of Jiangdong Hall Group, who disappeared, had successfully made their escape. Though they knew they were still in danger, many crumpled to the ground as soon as they stepped through the barrier. Eyes rolling back, Ma Yun collapsed over a boulder and wailed, No more, I've had enough. Friends, let's all just go home and lock our doors. I seriously can't do this anymore. Go home before we figured out what that array was and who came out of it? Asked Jiang Shi. What can we do? If we had the strength to fight them, we wouldn't have had to flee so pathetically. Master Xuanjing added his voice. Men, let's listen to Ma Zhuangju this time. Instead of heroically mounting a defense here and imperiling ourselves, we should regroup and return stronger with better preparations. Jiang Shi pursed his lips and looked toward the Xisheng Peak contingent. Shui Jingyang and Shui Meng both still stared up Mount Jiao's main path, equally dazed. Finally, a figure flew out from those clouds of billowing dust. Mo Run, mumbled Shui Meng. Mo Run was last to exit the barrier. Dark brows drawn low, he looked over the assembled group. It's the Zhenlong chess formation, and maybe the space-time gate of life and death. If that's really what it is, we don't know what caliber of person might emerge from it. All of you, hurry up and leave. Don't throw your lives away. Everyone's safety is more important. He paused before turning to Jiang Shi. Jiangmen, please take everyone to Rainbell Isle. With the Xuanwu barrier for defense, you can keep Hua Binan away for a while, and your sect specializes in medicine. There's no better place for those cursed with the heart tunnelers to receive treatment. What about you? Jiang Shi said. Shizun is still on the mountain. I'll go back and help him as soon as you've left, and meet you back at your sect once this is dealt with. After a long silence, Jiang Shi bowed to Mo Run. We shall wait for you at Guyue. Farewell. I don't think we will, is the thing. You know, farewell, you break it up into more than just the one word, and it's, you know, farewell, do well, be well, is what that means. And I just simply don't think that that's in the cards for us at this moment in time. The injured, exhausted, and debilitated made ready to leave this dangerous place with Jiang Shi. Mo Run called out again. Jiang Zhengmen, does Mo Zongsha have other matters to discuss? Monsieur, Mo Run didn't go on. I know. No one will harm a hair on her head. I promise you that. Only then did Mo Run relax. While Jiang Shi and the others left, those of Xisheng Peak stayed put. After hesitating, Shui Jingyong went up with his brow furrowed and his voice hoarse. Ronair, what's this about? Mo Run gazed at his uncle, then at his cousin. His heart ached horribly, but he forced a smile. It's a long, long story. Uncle, take Shui Meng to Guyue too. I'll tell you everything later. We gotta wait. We gotta wait for this download. More importantly, we have to wait for this download because Mo Run has to go pry Chu Waning out of Taishan Jun's hands. But how could Shui Meng wait that long? Thank you! Shui Meng is all of us. Anxiety and impatience flooded him. How could you be a descendant of Rufang sect? You've grown up at Xisheng Peak. He stammered for a moment, but what came out as his eyes reddened at the rims was, you're my ge, right? Mo Run looked at him. Shui Meng was shaking. He was obviously trying his best to control himself, but he was still shaking. The way he looked, dazed and miserable, was so pitiable. Mo Run tasted bitterness at the back of his throat. He didn't know what to say. He patted Shui Meng's shoulder. When I first came to Xisheng Peak, you didn't even want to acknowledge me. He smiled ruefully. He dared not meet Shui Meng's wide and tearful eyes. They were too clear, too passionate. And he was dirty. He was scared. It took Shui Meng a long beat to respond, his voice almost too hoarse to understand. Can't you give me a straight answer? His fingers tightened around Long Cheng's hilt. Mo Run had given him the crystal embedded in this scimitar. He clutched it like floating driftwood. In a matter of a few hours, he'd watched as Nangongsa threw himself into the demon dragon's blood pool, watched as Shimei was blinded and taken away, watched as Mo Run used his own blood to open a seal only a Nangong descendant could activate. He couldn't catch his breath. He felt like he was drowning. Well, at least we're not alone. At least she had the grace to have at least one of the other characters be as overwhelmed as we are. Mo Run couldn't bear it. Okay, he said. I'll give you a straight answer. He grasped Shui Meng's shoulder more firmly. He didn't know if it was Shui Meng or himself who was trembling, but it no longer mattered. He met Shui Meng's eyes and said with perfect clarity, Listen, I've never been part of Rufang sect. In this life, I've never done anything to harm Xisheng Peak. If I can, I will spend the rest of my life serving the sect. Shui Meng's lips parted as if to speak, but his tears fell before the words could escape his mouth. He bit his lip in silent endurance, but after a moment he broke down. Shimei and I never understood him. To be honest, I've never understood you either. I've been too willful. I never considered how either of you felt. I don't know anything. I'm always messing things up, but... He paused, tears coursing down his face. But I really do care about you guys. I'll never curse at you or bully Shimei ever again. I wish everything could go back to how it was. I just want everything to go back to how it was. He was sobbing so hard he could barely speak. Go, you better not be lying to me. Mo-run couldn't bear to let him continue. He guided Shui-mong over to Shui-jin-yong, his voice low and so weighted with tears it brought to mind dawn dew lying heavy on blooming flowers. Be good. Go with Uncle. Once this is over, I'll come find you as soon as I can. He turned back toward the Mount Jiao barrier and released the seal. He walked through without looking back. It's a scene break. The chamber containing the Dragon Soul pool was in ruins, its toppled stone pillars lying in the wreckage of a bitter fight of which only drifting smoke remained. Tish-Yun-jun's long blade was pressed to Chu Waning's throat, a stark red seeping from his skin and staining the pitch-black edge. Chu Waning closed his eyes, pursed his lips, and said nothing. Shizun, I don't think you are taking this fight seriously. There was no response. You were distracted. Tish-Yun-jun dragged him upright. The long blade Bugui disappeared with a flick of his fingers, but he'd worked the strongest binding spells in that fraction of a moment. The jade-green glow kept Chu Waning firmly bound as Tish-Yun-jun grabbed his chin and forced his face up. Tell this venerable one, what are you thinking about? Chu Waning's eyes fluttered open. That dear yet deeply alien face reflected in his pupils. He was afraid. This wasn't Mo-run. But each of this man's attacks were so similar to Mo-run's. Most terrifyingly of all, Chu Waning had dreamed of him before. In those unthinkable dreams he'd had of himself and Mo-run, he'd always seemed to have this pale and angular face. There was wickedness in his handsomeness, those dark pupils filled not with tenderness, but with a cruel and crazed light. Even if you don't say it, this venerable one knows, Tish-Yun-jun purred. Shizun must be wondering who I am, what I'm babbling about, why I've come. Pale fingers caressed Chu Waning's face. Don't worry. This venerable one will tell you everything in due time. By the way, he looked down at Chu Waning's left hand. Don't bother summoning Zhuge or Huaisha. This venerable one is ready. I would never make the same mistake twice. Chu Waning's expression darkened at the mention of his other two holy weapons. Though his phoenix eyes were stormy, there was a confusion in them. Tish-Yun-jun seemed to delight in this look of bafflement on his stern face. He laughed aloud. What is it? He said, stroking Chu Waning's cheek. Does it shock you that I know about Zhuge and Huaisha? I understand. This venerable one understood long before coming here. I know something of this place. My counterpart in this world. The fuck does that mean? My counterpart in this world hasn't yet turned everything into a sea of blood. He hasn't forced you to meet him with swords drawn. Of course he hasn't seen those two weapons. Your counterpart in this world. Tish-Yun-jun gave him a smile, but not an answer. What the fuck? Question. I just have a question. The theory then has to become that both Mo-run and Chu Waning are just from this timeline, and they've had like memories of another timeline. put into their heads, but they're not actually, like, there's OG Taishanjun and Chuaning, and then there's the one that we've been reading about the whole time. Is that has to be the theory, right? I'm not crazy. Right? Like, we don't know. And I love how, like, nobody in the chat knows. Well, I mean, obviously, because everybody in the chat who can comment right now are all new readers. But, like, Liv says, but Mo-Run remembers those weapons, right? Does he? Maddie, yes. Massive plot twist if Mo-Run isn't actually reborn. Yeah. It would in a completely different way. Damn it, I can't name the series, but there's a South Korean horror series that does something reminiscent. If it turns out he wasn't fucking reborn like this whole time, I swear to God, I swear to God. Where am I? I have no idea. There is an ocean of text and I have no idea where I'm floating. Hang on. Am I just at a new page? Who can say? I am. All right. Chills ran down Chuaning's spine. This Mo-Run looked at him as one would look at a corpse or a mirage. His gaze was raw and feral, his pupils filled with an intensity that threatened to draw onlookers into his madness. The space-time gate of life and death, he said deliberately. Shizun ought to know this forbidden technique well. Chuaning tensed. In a different universe, Shizun. You've been dead for many years. He watched Chuaning's rapidly paling face lose the last of its color. Taishanjun gazed at him, an inconstant light dancing in his eyes. Like a sword unsheathing or a dragon breaking the waves, his calmness shattered. He yanked Chuaning closer, his demeanor dissolving into insanity. That's right. Just like this exact face. This exact face. I watched this face of yours. I watched you lie in the Red Lotus Pavilion like the living dead, day in and day out. There was no color in your cheeks. Your body was pristine, but you never spoke or opened your eyes. In that universe, you've been dead a long time. You had your revenge on me. He gulped in air, eyes blazing. They were full of despair, a wild storm gathering within. Chuaning, I hate you. You left me there alone. If this man hopped timelines to find a Shizun that's not dead, despite his words, he clutched Chuaning tighter, crushing him in his embrace. Chuaning was so warm in his arms, like a flame. It burned Taishanjun. He sighed low in his throat, tightening his grip around this long-awaited warmth, wanting nothing more than to devour it whole. Then, whether he lived or died, whether amidst searing heat or bitter cold, he'd have a companion. He'd have someone to take with him to the grave. He wouldn't be so terribly lonely. No. Chuaning's scalp was prickling, his vision darkening. What was going on? He didn't understand at all. Who had died? Who had left whom alone? The doors to the Dragon Soul pool opened again. The shadows shifted, and someone was running toward him with an anxious cry of Shizun. Those hundreds of cultivators drew their swords and moved into defensive positions. Thank you. At the sound of the newcomer's voice, Emperor Taishanjun paused for a moment before smiling wanly. And here I was, wondering who would come. So it's him. He waved a hand, a slow and careless gesture. Stand back, he said to his pawns. Let him through. Mo-Run had spent the entire trip up the mountain thinking about the Zhenlong chess formation and the space-time gate of life and death. Hua Binan couldn't be the ultimate mastermind. If all this had been Hua Binan's doing, Xu Shuanglin would have surely exposed him after he wrecked Xu Shuanglin's plans at the soul-summoning platform. Then who was behind it? Zhenlong chess, the space-time gate, Bugui, the ancient legend of two worlds colliding. Each of these things connected. A terrible notion rose in his mind, one that chilled him to the bone. He didn't believe it. He had run this whole way, refusing to believe it, until he arrived at the Dragon Soul pool and saw that man's face. Mo-Run's ears rang. Blood rushed to his head. He couldn't breathe, his lips opening and closing as terror gripped him. No. How could this be real? The man in the hall stood ringed by those pawns, his face contemptuous and cold, his eyes alight with scorn and amusement. He watched Mo-Run idly. They had the same eyes, nose, lips. They had the same face and spirit, the same body and soul. The differences were barely perceptible. It was as if Mo-Run was looking in a mirror, or looking through the sands of time to see that ghoulish, shadowy version of himself. The corners of Taishanjun's lips hooked up, splitting his mouth into a bloodthirsty grin. He hauled Chu Wanning before him, stroking the seam of Chu Wanning's lips to spell him silent, before addressing the man at the door. Oh, it's Mo Zongsha. This venerable one has heard so much about you. Now that the space-time gate has opened, we meet at last. He paused, eyes glinting. White teeth snapped around his last sweetly icy words. It's an honor. I'll be back in just 1 second. Oh, God! You're fucking joking! You're kidding! They're two different... The end of the chapter. What do you mean? If okay. If this creates about 1 million new questions, but ultimately, if they've just been picking up memories, which means our Mo-Run has never done anything. There's just been something memories got dropped into him, but he hasn't done anything? Let me check. We're on page 265 for chapter 235, which is called Nowhere to Go. But let me check real quick just how long. Okay, so it's kind of a... All right, so there's some... Yeah, so we're already a little bit past 4, but we're reading longer than usual today. So right about now is actually where we should be taking the break. So you know what? We're going to take the break. I'm going to do a couple laps around the neighborhood. I'll be right back for more of this bullshit. Apparently. Where's the bookmark? It's over here. I don't know. I'll try to have a brain cell when we get back, I'll have the winner of the first volume of Captive Prince, which is called Captive Prince. It's a trilogy that you should be reading if you haven't already. So I'll be back with that, and maybe when I come back with that, I'll have like 2 words to rub together into some kind of coherent sentence. Don't hold your breath though. I'll be right back. Welcome back. So, the winner of the copy of Captive Prince is Cry Scary 494. Appropriate headed into Halloween. Cry Scary 494. Please drop me a DM on Tumblr. There's a Gaywatch Tumblr. If you're a patron over on the Patreon, free members can also drop DMs as well, unless I'm incorrect about that. Or on Blue Sky, I'm over there as well. Wherever that you can drop me a line so that I can get your information and send this to you. Cry Scary 494. Congratulations. You're in for it. Yeah. Where the hell? I am so unbelievably scattered today, guys. I cannot actually communicate the zoomies that I have this week for umpteen million different reasons. And so like everything is taking twice as long as it should. And that's compared to a normal ADHD day in which everything takes like 10 times longer than it should. So we're just going through a time. It's a little bit of a moment up here this week. Let alone everything that's happening right now. What do you mean he was never reborn? Mo-Run was never reborn? Then what's with the memory fuckery? And like what? She let us theorize for so long about what in the absolute heck is going on. And jumping over from timelines, being pulled over from other, something like that. And now, like, psych? That's not a thing? We should have been paying attention to the memory stuff? I don't know. But we're going to, oh Jesus, I have now officially forgotten where we're stopping for today. Hang on. Let me consult the glorious message that I have from Love over in the... Wow. I literally just forgot the name for Discord. That just dropped right out of my skull for about 5 seconds. There we are. We're reading to 238. So, page 265, chapter 235, called Nowhere to Go. Joyful. How? Mo-Run took an unsteady step backward, shaking his head. How could this be? It's you. Correct. It is indeed this venerable one. Taeshun-jun looked him up and down, smiling. This venerable one thought you would have forgotten much of your past life when you were reborn. So he was reborn! Then I need someone to sit me down, pat my head, and explain it to me. Please. I'm going insane. We're going to take that sentence again. This venerable one thought you would have forgotten much of your past life when you were reborn, but it seems you remember it quite well. From the look on your face, I'd say you already guessed at my existence. Perhaps you're not so stupid after all. I sure as hell am. I'm an idiot. A thousand menacing words crowded to the tip of Mo-Run's tongue, ready to pour from his throat. But what escaped from his stammering lips was no more than a disbelieving howl. You're already dead. Oh. You took poison back at Wushan Palace, a lethal poison with no chance of survival. You died before the heaven-piercing tower. You were buried in the coffin beneath the tree. You're dead. Random thought. If Morun was dead, then how would he remember? I mean, he killed himself in the to be buried under there. But I guess that's what he means, because otherwise, how do you know that you were actually buried underneath the tree if you were supposed to be dead at the time? But I think he's presuming because he put himself in the... Okay, sorry. Taehyunjun chuckled. But that's not the whole story. He looked up slowly, revealing a brittle smile. His eyes were like the fangs of a most ferocious beast, ready to pierce and shatter Mo Zongsha's facade. Why doesn't this venerable one try instead? His voice was smooth as silk, carefree and mocking. That's right. This venerable one is dead. The one who knows it best is standing right in front of me, he said into the breathless silence. Because you are this venerable one's escaped soul. He began laughing. The endlessly benevolent Mo Zongsha. Even across these two worlds, this venerable one has heard tell of your, how shall we put it, heroic deeds. He grinned. You're so much fun. I thought you didn't remember much of the past, and that's how you could act as if nothing had happened. But you do remember, don't you? Morun clenched his jaw. Oh, Mo Zongsha. Did you think no one would know as long as you stayed silent? Did you think the world would give you a second chance as long as you put down the butcher's knife? Most importantly, Taehyunjun tightened his grip on Chu Waning's neck, his nails sinking deep into flesh. Bruised and furious, Chu Waning couldn't say a word through his bespelled lips. Did you think I would be so kind as to let you bask in the light when the fire was gone from my world? I don't know. I don't know what to do. Someone told me what to do. I don't know what to do. I'm not, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing in this moment. I think I finally cracked. I think I cracked. I think it's over. I think it's over for me. Go on without me. I don't know what to do. Oh God. Okay. All right, we just need to calm down. Everybody needs to calm down. I just need more lemonade and we all need to calm down. We gotta relax. Okay. Don't touch him. Taehyunjun snickered. Don't touch him? Don't you think it's a bit rich for you to say that to me? Still gripping Chu Waning, he paced in slow circles, his eyes never leaving Morun's. Taehyunjun stared down at Mo Zongsha. Morun stared down Moeyu. The past locked eyes with the present. Have you forgotten how this venerable one touched him? Taehyunjun taunted. Who are you putting on this virtuous show for? Don't say it. Why not? Did you not think it was fun? Were you not satisfied? After so many years across a death and a life, don't you want to take a walk down memory lane? Morun shook his head again and again. His expression was even worse than Chu Waning's, filled with fury and helplessness, guilt and despair. Don't say it. Oh, that's how badly you want this venerable one to shut up, Fascinating. Our kind and heroic Mo Zongsha looks... Taishanjun carefully shaped the words in his mouth. Very scared. Mo Run couldn't hold back any longer. The sight of Chu Wanning held so tightly in Taishanjun's arms set his heart racing with fear. He didn't think. All he wanted was to stop this devil from speaking, to bury every inch of that bygone ugliness in a coffin under 6 feet of earth. Jiangui flared to life and tore toward Taishanjun, its scarlet sparks crackling. Its light was brighter and more vicious than ever before. Taishanjun danced aside, his expression shifting. Tianwen. But even as he said the word, he knew it wasn't. Your new holy weapon certainly is interesting. He cast a thoughtful glance at the red willow vine. When he met Mo Run's eyes again, his gaze was several degrees colder. If that's how it is... He leapt backward, shoving Chu Wanning toward a subordinate before lifting a hand and summoning Bugui. Come, spar with this venerable one. I want to know if I'm stronger wielding Bugui or Vine Whip. Taishanjun ran his hand down the length of the long blade, and Bugui glowed green, imbued with his spiritual energy. Mo Zongsha followed suit, brushing his fingers over the willow vine. Jiangui blazed crimson, its forked flames tearing at the air. Fire elemental! Taishanjun laughed out loud. I do have a dual-element spiritual core, but I remember I much preferred wood over fire. Why did you change that? Mo Run gave him no response. His expression was set, his mouth tightly pursed. There was a hint of sorrow in his gaze. His were the eyes of someone dangling on the edge of an abyss. Those near-identical figures flew into the sky, matching blow for blow in pitched battle. Jiangui and Bugui screamed soundlessly, coursing with ferocious spiritual energy. Their clashing was like a dragon slamming into a whale, or a towering wave crashing over a leviathan. Paving stones around the Dragon Soul pool shattered, sending loose gravel flying. The bursts of spiritual energy sent the lava of the Dragon Soul pool splashing high in the air and spilling across the ground. The onlookers enchanted their feet so the oozing lava wouldn't burn them, and Taishanjun and Mo Zongsha did the same. The two of them rivaled each other in ferocity, the long blade clanging as the vine whip crackled. One black shadow flew at another. Bloodthirsty eyes met despairing ones as each strike and every hit flared at the apex of their power. Amidst the shriek of weapons colliding, the two of them leapt into the air. The whip scraped against the long blade, sending up sparks that lit 2 pale faces. One in death reversed, one in life akin to death. I don't have time to scream about the description. Torrential waves crashed in Taishanjun's eyes. Bugui, temper spirit, he cried, sending a surge of spiritual energy into the weapon. Mo Zongsha gritted his teeth and did the same with Jiangui. Filled with their spiritual energies, the weapons glowed, crimson dueling teal. With an earth-shattering boom, Bugui pierced Mo Run's shoulder and Jiangui slashed Taishanjun's left arm. Both groaned and fell back to the ground, panting. Neither spared a thought for their wounds. All of their attention was bent on their opponent. They were 2 beasts locked in a fight from which only one could emerge victorious. Taishanjun's eyes darkened. Your whip strikes look too much like his. Meaning Chu Wanning, of course. Mo Zongsha had no time to waste on Taishanjun. His eyes blazed. Get the fuck out of here. You mean this venerable one? Taishanjun scoffed. Mo Wei-yu, what right do you have? Have you worn the skin of a sheep for so long you've forgotten your teeth are stained with lamb's blood? What is that line of dialogue? Absolutely fucking not. Absolutely fucking not. What the hell page was that even on? Okay. It's page 269, by the way. They rushed at each other again, holding nothing back. Taishanjun flew like the wind, sending sparks showering across the lava, roiling beneath his feet. But how could Mo Run not anticipate every one of his strikes? Battling Taishanjun was like fighting his own reflection on the surface of a lake. He withdrew before Taishanjun's blade even fell, molten rock sizzling beneath his soles. Each of their movements and gestures were precisely anticipated. 100 blows were exchanged in an instant, but both were evenly matched. Neither could defeat the other. Sweat beaded on Mo-Run's forehead. Tae-Shan-Jun was also panting shallowly. They paced, wary, circling each other. A drop of sweat slid between two dark brows, hung for a moment, then fell to the ground. Mo-Run ground his teeth. "What are you doing this for?" "I've already said it. The fire has gone out of this venerable one's world. Don't even dream of taking this last flame for yourself." He alluded to it a couple of pages ago, but now we just have it. He just said it. It's just the thing that he fucking said. What is text? I don't know. Mo-Run's temper flared. "He's your last flame, too." "But this venerable one can't have him," Tae-Shan-Jun spat. "Anyway, what difference is there between the two of us? This venerable one's hands are bathed in blood. Are yours any cleaner? What right do you have to Shimei, to Chu-Wan-Ning, to that ridiculous uncle and cousin of yours, while this venerable one is doomed to an endless night without dreams? Why should you have him?" Mo-Run froze. "But you've had him before." He stared at himself from the past life. The words he'd held in his heart for so long took shape in that murmur. "You've had him before. You were the one who trampled him underfoot. You were the one who snuffed him out." Y'all, we're gonna be here until 9 fucking p.m. If I have to have a mental fucking breakdown every 2 goddamn lines, it's gonna be Friday and we'll still be in this stream. Tae-Shan-Jun's expression turned vicious, his nose wrinkling and his eyes flaring like an evil dragon twisted in their depths. He was so upset, he dropped the imperial pronoun entirely. "I destroyed him. Ridiculous. How are you so sure he wasn't the one destroying me?" "You don't know the truth of what happened at the Heavenly Rift." "I don't need to," Tae-Shan-Jun sneered. "Mo-Wei-Yu, it's too late. Everything turned out fine, didn't it? I just need him to be alive, to be mine, to have him in my grasp. I don't care if he's happy or if he hates me. None of that matters." He paused. "As long as I can see him." Tormented by fury and anguish, torn by all-encompassing regret, Mo-Run's voice shook. So did the rest of him. "You've already ruined him once. Are you going to ruin yourself and him from this world a second time?" Tae-Shan-Jun's cheeks dimpled brilliantly as he studied Mo-Run's expression. "What's there to ruin? It's the same for you, isn't it? It doesn't matter if he lives or dies as long as he's in my hands. Nothing else matters." Mo-Run shook his head, his eyes falling shut. "You're wrong," he rasped. "He doesn't deserve that. He's the one who treated you best." "Ridiculous." Tae-Shan-Jun's smile froze on his face. "He's the one who treated me best? Then what about Shimei? Mo-Zong-Sha, do you hear yourself? Shi Mingjing has always been gentle and thoughtful toward you. He's the one you ought to care for. Now you're telling me that Chu-Wan-Ning's the best? Do you know how absurd you sound?" "You're the one who's absurd." They pressed close, spiritual energy sizzling in the collision. The rims of Mo-Run's eyes were red. "He treated you with sincerity. It's just that he's foolish. There are so many stupid things he did that he refused to tell you about. Wake up. The object of your affections isn't Shimei. When have you ever felt desire for Shimei? When you lie in your empty bed in Wushan Palace, who do you think about?" Reading himself the riot act. This venerable one won't argue that he's good for a fuck, Taishanjun idly responded. So what? He can never replace Shimei. This man was himself, but his words infuriated Mo-run so deeply his head seemed to ring. Might be one of the most relatable things Mo-run has ever said. Don't talk about him like that. Taishanjun narrowed his eyes. So protective. Did you crawl into bed with him again? Mo-run said nothing. You fucked him in this life too. He watched Mo-run with the slitted gaze of a snake. Neither had stopped fighting for a second. Some of the pawns, unable to withstand the force of their spell work, lay curled up on the ground. Taishanjun flicked his eyes sideways to Chu Wanning. Mozongsha, he murmured. This venerable one heard Shimei was alive and well in this world, and yet you neglect him like this. For a beat, Mo-run found himself at a complete loss as to how to argue with this mysteriously revived jackass who'd stepped out of the space-time gate. What about you then? He managed. You're now in this world where Shimei is alive. Why were you clinging to my Shizun when I entered? Your Shizun? Taishanjun swung his gaze back to Mo-run, mouth twisted in mockery. You know what kind of relationship this venerable one has with your Shizun. Tell me, do I have the right to hold him or not? Mo-run only wanted him to release Chu Wanning. Do you think this behavior is respectful to Shimei? Someone as pure as Shimei cannot be profaned. Taishanjun didn't take the bait. Chu Wanning is different, he lazily said. He looks so high and mighty, so formidable, so self-assured. But have you forgotten how slutty he looks when he's taking your cock? I need to figure out what the fuck I put behind me just so that I can rip it off the walls in moments like this. It won't be obviously anything irreplaceable, just something that I can print out and have back here so that you guys have a nice background instead of just a ton of beige, and so that I can rip apart my fucking room when I need to. This is what needs to happen. Also, Chu Wanning is just here. He's just there. He's just hearing all of that. This is what the last 3 volumes, 8, 9, 10, 11, this is what the last 4 volumes are. It's just processing what's happening right now. Mo-run stilled. He hadn't expected Taishanjun to be so brazen. His words, really? His words immediately conjured the mental image of Chu Wanning, moaning wantonly beneath him. His mind raced ahead despite himself, recalling that evening when Chu Wanning, under the influence of the strongest aphrodisiac in the world, had succumbed to pleasure, raising his hips to meet Mo-run's thrusts with unfettered fervor. He recalled the sweat-soaked bestial intensity of their coupling. He remembered those phoenix eyes, humiliated and resentful, yet brimming with tears, fluttering closed. Chu Wanning's glassy gaze and parted lips, his helpless panting. He squeezed his eyes shut. When he opened them, they were sparking with flame. I'm nothing like you. In this lifetime, I never what? This time it was Taishanjun who was confused. He'd never cherished Chu Wanning, so he couldn't conceive of the tenderness and restraint Mo-run had exercised in their bed. A turn or more passed before the fury and helplessness in the other man's eyes clued him in. What followed was abject shock. Wait, you're joking, right? Have you really not? This is why they haven't banged yet. Narratively speaking, she designed this so that this is why, so we can have this right now. This is why they haven't. Okay. Mo-run clenched his jaw so hard his teeth ached. The red halo hazing off Jengui seemed to solidify, as if ready to destroy the entirety of the Dragon Soul Pool's chamber. Taishanjun burst into laughter. Mozongsha, perhaps we're not so alike after all. Are we even the same person? Huh? One was a mad dog, the other a loyal hound. It's 273. You know what's funny? You know what's funny? Of all the things that have happened today, just today, of all the things that have happened just today, and all the things that are currently happening right now, it was that somehow that has legitimately pushed me closer to that line. The mad dog howled with teeth bared, while the loyal hound silently, shamefully, and stubbornly stood in his path. Faced with his colossal misdeeds, the look of powerlessness on the loyal hound's face was despairing and deeply pitiful. But neither seemed able to win this fight. Tianjun gradually grew bored. All right, I've had enough. Mozongsha, have a taste of my true power. He waved his hand, and those waiting Zhenlong pawns charged forth. Mo-Run was instantly surrounded, stuck without a chance of escape. This is your true power. Tianjun slipped away from the throng and wandered over to Chu Wanning, turning to show Mo-Run a sneer. This venerable one's chess pieces are this venerable one's weapons. Of course they're my true power. Mo-Run watched as he patted Chu Wanning's face with the bloody edge of Bugui, then reached out to grip his jaw and hiss something into his ear. His vision went white with rage. He forgot Chu Wanning and Bugui shared a hostile connection. "Bugui!" he shouted. That long blade gleamed and swayed in Tianjun's grip. It seemed conflicted, hesitant. It didn't know which master it should obey. Tianjun frowned at his weapon. Oh, you're going to listen to him. But pain burst inside Chu Wanning's skull at this call. Those dreams he had, those shattered scraps, poured into his head like a wave of sandy stone tumbling downhill. The crimson drapes, the sharp musk of the firs, their entangled limbs, kneeling outside the hall, hearing the snickering of the palace maids. Tianjun noticed his reaction and lifted his silencing spell with a twitch of his fingers. What's wrong with you? Chu Wanning made no answer. Agony consumed him. He felt as if his head would split apart. He saw ashes blanketing the earth, smoke filling the sky, a black-robed man standing between, surrounded by corpses strewn across a desolate plain. Shizun. The man turned to reveal Mo-Run's face, grinning a devilish grin. Something red and slick pulsed in his hand. Upon closer inspection, it was a still-beating human heart. You're finally here. Did you come to stop me? He squeezed. The heart disintegrated in his hands, exposing the dazzling spiritual core within. Mo-Run absorbed it into his own palm. He closed in, one step after another. We were master and disciple half our lives. I never thought things would come to this. Veins stood out at Chu Wanning's temples and blood rushed through his ears. He closed his eyes. Tianjun watched the change come over him and reached up to touch his face, then wrenched his jaw upward. What's wrong? Does it hurt? Chu Wanning was shaking in his grip. I didn't injure you that badly. Tianjun frowned, misunderstanding his pain. When did you become so weak? But Chu Wanning was silent. He knit his brows, trying to speak, when a loud crash came from outside. Tianjun's already pallid face turned paler. Someone broke through the Mount Jiao barrier. He whirled around, eyes flashing. An almond-yellow silhouette streaked in at terrifying speed, moving in an eerie frenzy like a drifting ghost. In the blink of an eye, that figure had wrested Chu Wanning out of his hands. Mo-Run's cry of "Shizun" came just as Tianjun cried out, "Wanning!" They exchanged a mutual scornful look before turning to the uninvited guest hanging in the air, his yellow monk's robes fluttering. Master Huizui. Huizui's expression was ugly. he seemed more shriveled than he had been 5 years ago. But the sharpness of his eyes hadn't faded in the least. They still resembled light over water, rippling in ceaseless waves. Mo-Run relaxed. He didn't know why Huizue had appeared, but this was the man who had used rebirth to save Chu Wanning. Surely he wouldn't hurt him. I don't know anything anymore. Taishanjun had never seen this man before, and his expression had gone dangerous. Oh, look, a bald donkey. And where did you crawl out from? Will you oppose this venerable one as well? Huizue shot him a glance before looking toward Mo-Run once more. He seemed unfazed by the presence of 2 Mo-Yus, his expression closer to worry than surprise. Moshiju. Huizue bowed to him. There were too many present. To keep Taishanjun from overhearing, he brought his message to Mo-Run's ears with a spell. I cannot stay long. Come to Dragonblood Mountain at once. Find me there. He paused and repeated, at once. There was no more. He left with the same quickness with which he'd come and disappeared. Neither the Zhenlong Ponds nor the barrier around Mount Jiao stopped him. There was an instant where Mo-Run clearly saw a cultivator grab him by the arm, but in the next, Huizue was far beyond the chamber. The pawn's hand had caught nothing but cold air. What? Taishanjun had turned to give chase when a shrill whistle cut through the air. Freezing in place, he swore. Now, the whistle kept screaming. Brows tightly knit, Taishanjun cast a final glance at Mo-Run and reluctantly waved a hand to the black-clad crowd behind him. Count your lucky stars. There'll be plenty of time yet for us to cross blades. With those parting words, he led the massed chess pieces back in the direction of the soul-summoning platform. We were on a timer? This dark army had arrived with ferocity and left in haste. Huizue had vanished, and so had Taishanjun. No one was left by the Dragon Soul pool. Mo-Run sped to the soul-summoning platform just in time to see Taishanjun leap into the air and sail back through that black demonic array. His Zhenlong pawns followed, one after another, swallowed up by that endless darkness in a blink. As the last wave of cultivators passed through, the array creased and twisted, shrinking to nothingness. Only the moon hung in the night sky, tinged with bloody crimson. The space-time gate of life and death had closed. Mo-Run stood atop the soul-summoning platform in the howling wind. He looked up at endless night and down at the dead littering the ground, dazed and chilled to the bone. All of this felt like a dream, but he knew it wasn't. Everything that had happened today was only the beginning. He was a ghost who had fled from death. However slow his retribution was in coming, it had come nonetheless. His sins had ever been a blade hanging over his head. They were finally here to punish him, to claim his life. He pictured Taishanjun's bloodshot, ferocious eyes. Redemption, Taishanjun laughed. What? It all finally caught up to me. Redemption. Taishanjun laughed. What redemption? You and I are the same. You can never wash away the blood you're covered in. He saw Shui Meng from his past life. howling hysterically. Mo Wei Yu, I'll rip you apart. I'll never forgive you, not in this life or the next. He heard the terrifying sound of Song Chutong's scream as she hit. We're going to take this sentence again. He heard the terrifying sound of Song Chutong's scream as she hit the boiling oil. He heard Yuang Shi's voice as she said there was not a single man to be found in all the cities of Rufeng. He saw the determination and worry in Xu Shuanglin's face as he stepped in front of Yuang Shi. Yi Fu! The scream drilled into his ear like an awl, leaving a bloody wound. At last, he saw another silhouette among those flickering shadows, that bloody path, that bygone nightmare. Pristine and composed, standing beneath the high tung tree. That figure turned, and in the light of the sun and the shade of the clouds, he smiled. Mo Run. Mo Run forgot how to breathe. It was I who wronged you. Excuse me, I'm far too beside myself. It was I who wronged you. I won't blame you, in life or death. Mo Run crumpled to his knees. He had fought through the night. His clothes were in disarray and bloodied in every corner. Beneath that clear sky and bright moon, he stared ahead for a moment, then curled up like a worm. Huddled on the ground, he shook with sobs. Shizun. Shizun. He howled, choking on the words. It's not like this. That's not me. Please, all of you. That's not me. I want to turn back. I want to start over. I'll pay any price. Please. I'll tear out my beating heart. Just don't make me die in Taishun-jun's name. I really don't want to be him anymore. Please. Henry, wasn't it you and I who literally had a conversation about this in the book chat before this stream today? Wasn't that you? I hate us so hard right now. He thought of Shui Meng, then of Shimei. He thought of that stick of Tongulu Shui Meng had handed him when they were young, haughtily telling him he didn't care if he ate it or not. He thought of Shui Meng sobbing as he clung to his lapels when they parted, telling him, "Guh, you better not be lying to me." He thought of a young Shimei bringing him a steaming bowl of wontons. "Aran," he'd said, "I don't have parents either. So we'll be each other's family from now on, okay?" He thought of Shimei blinding himself on the soul-summoning platform. As those bloody tears fell, he'd said, "You've never actually understood me." He thought of Shui Jingyong and Madame Wang, recalled how they'd died in the past life, and how Shui Meng's face had twisted into a mask of hate. He thought of Chu Wanning, and couldn't think anymore. He dug his fingers into the ground with such force his knuckles split and bled. "What do I do? What do I do?" He wailed in grief and despair, like a trapped beast whipped until its skin tattered and flayed. It was only now he understood. He'd thought of Taishun-jun as someone extraneous to this world. But what about him? Wasn't he the same? Was there any safe harbor for him in all this vast world? Would any of his surviving friends forgive him? He was unnecessary. He curled in on himself, clutched himself, racked with sobs, just as he had all those years ago in the burial ground beside his mother's rotting corpse. He'd cried, not knowing where he should go, or where he could call home. Now, he was almost more wretched than he'd been in his youth. He suddenly didn't know who he, Mo Wei Yu, was anymore. Emperor Taishun-jun, Mo Zongsha. 7th generation descendant of the Rufeng clan, the lost and found second young master of Xisheng Peak, the irredeemable Lord of Evil and the kind-hearted Grand Master of Good. It took a single moment for him to shatter, splitting into slivers upon slivers, each so sharp just one would be enough to give him death. Death by 1,000, 10,000 cuts, till no piece of flesh remained that could be called whole. In death, as in life, he was alone. "I'm not Taishan-jun," mumbled Moran. He was so cold. The soul-summoning platform was freezing. Every inch of him shivered. He closed his eyes, tears streaming down his face. He sobbed. "I'm not Taishan-jun. What do I do? I don't know what to do anymore. Spare me. Spare me." Whom was he pleading with? Chu Wanning, his own past self? Those countless vengeful ghosts who'd fallen under his blade? Or his own miserable fate? No one would forgive him. No one at all. He buried his face in his hands, and on that desolate mountaintop, finally sobbed himself breathless. What can I do? It's the end of the chapter. Oh, was that the end of an arc? Because at the top of, we're on page 281 for chapter 236, which is called A Monk's Passing. So, there's that. But there's also, I feel like that's the thing they do. You see it says Dragon Blood Mountain up at the top. I believe they've done that at the start of new arcs, right? Maddie, not another mountain. Yeah, Dragon Blood Mountain arc is what we're dealing with, apparently. Oh yeah, thank you for pointing that out, Kem. You said the little icon has also changed. Yeah, the icon at the top of each chapter has also changed. Okay. Mo-Run descended Mount Jiao. He walked, eyes glazed, in stiff and perfect silence. When he came to a fork in the road, he sank into thought. The battle was over. The morning sun was rising in the east, its light washing away the stains of night. Only dew and the fresh scent of greenery hung between the trees as the dawn applied rosy colors to the sky like rouge. He turned toward those lofty mountain peaks, then back toward the path before him. Going straight ahead would take him to Rainbell Isle, where Shui Meng and his uncle were waiting for an explanation and an answer. But he couldn't go. He had to head to Dragonblood Mountain. Master Huizui must know far more than Mo-Run had thought. Otherwise, he couldn't have been so calm at the sight of Emperor Taishan-jun. Perhaps that was why Mo-Run felt so lost. He had no idea what awaited him. His mind was a mess, and he had no energy for further rumination. He only numbly knew he had to go because Shizun was there. Dragonblood Mountain was close to Wubei Temple. In the past, the monks had gone there to meditate and reach enlightenment, but the mountain was often blanketed in thick fog. Many spoke of getting lost and roaming in circles upon its slopes, and some never returned afterward. Thus the mountain was gradually abandoned. Riding his sword, Mo-Run traveled an entire day without stopping, and landed at the foot of Dragonblood Mountain as the sun was sinking below the horizon. He hadn't eaten or drunk the entire day and was too exhausted to continue. As soon as he spotted a clear stream trickling between the cypress trees, he cupped water in his hand and washed his face. What came off first was mud, then dissolving blood. Only then was his face visible, reflected in the rippling water. It wasn't a hideous one, but as Mo-Run studied his own features, he found them unspeakably repulsive. He struck the water's surface to break the reflection, then closed his eyes. Tormented, he buried his face in his palms, scrubbing at his cheeks. Was there anything that could cleanly cut a person's past from their present? A blade that could gouge those putrid memories from his head? Could anyone save him? Tell him, you're not Taishanjun. You're only Mo-Run. You're Mo-Wei-Yu and no one else. But when he opened his eyes, the waters had calmed. The face in the stream still stared at him in resentment and despair. He had no other choice. He rose and went up the mountain. Halfway up, a fog rose, so thick as to be nearly solid. Mo-Run first suspected it was the work of evil spirits, but didn't sense any hint of malevolent energy. It was late now. The forest echoed with the sorrowful cries of the cuckoo. The temperature dropped. The sunlight was fast disappearing. Darkness fell around him. Master? His voice was hoarse as he fumbled his way forward. Master Huizui? No one answered. Strangely enough, though he was stumbling nearly blind, he encountered no obstructions. The path he walked was disturbingly smooth, as if someone had laid it out in advance of his coming, laying a trap within the mist, perhaps, waiting for him to step in by himself. Is anyone there? The mist receded. The way before him became clear. As the fog melted, the stones and foliage of the mountain appeared distinct before him. He realized he'd walked unwittingly into a clearing. When he turned, the path he'd taken was already hidden in the fog. There was only this patch of clear sky and crisp air. He stepped over dew-laden dried grasses, striding ahead until he sensed a human presence. Mo-Run stared, then started running. Shizin! He cried. Chuaning was kneeling before a mountain cave, its entrance half hidden by vines. Master Huizui sat in silent meditation before him, his brow furrowed. Shizin, you... He fell silent as Chuaning turned. His lashes were dark with tears, his face streaked with their marks. What's wrong? Exclaimed Mo-Run. Chuaning didn't speak. He'd been holding himself together. For years, he'd been lofty and majestic, as if he'd sprung into the world fully grown, a powerful cultivator who'd never been young or weak. But this time, even with all his strength, he only managed 2 words before sobs escaped his lips. Mo-Run. Mo-Run rushed to him and knelt by his side, wrapping him in his arms. What's wrong? Why are you crying? He bent to caress Chuaning's hair. Chuaning was very cold, but having found him, having clutched him tight, Mo-Run felt his own heart burn very warm. Every moment of peace together was stolen. Every word he exchanged with Chuaning was a mistaken gift from the heavens. He cherished everything he received. He dared not waste any bit of it. It's okay. Despite his own powerlessness, he pulled Chuaning into his warm and strong embrace. Everything's fine, he said soothingly. I'm here. I'm with you. I'm right here. Mo-Run kissed Chuaning's temple. He discovered that, though Chuaning was trying to hide it, the man in his arms was still shaking, still crying. With his fingers twisted tight in Mo-Run's lapels, He resembled very much that long-gone little Shidi from Peach Blossom Springs. No one was born strong. Chuaning, too, had once been young. As I smack the shit out of the mic. Moran tensed, comprehension dawning. Holding the trembling Chu Wanning, kissing his face and caressing his hair, he looked toward Master Huizui. The old monk sat on a massive boulder, brows furrowed and lashes cast low. His half-lidded gaze was empty. In his hand, slightly outstretched as if an offering, lay a branch of high tongue blossoms. The receiver must have rejected his gift. The flowers had shriveled, leaving only a few petals clinging to the tips of the wizened twigs. Huizui had passed away, and with him any information that we could immediately obtain. Even in his very last moments, this man, who was the subject of myth and mystery, wore no expression of ease. His face in death was lined with anguish. Even worse, he no longer had the youthful look of a man in his 30s. Death had reduced him to a shriveled husk, and for some reason a small golden insect was eating away at his face. This insect, it's an oath bug, Chu Wanning finally spoke, his voice a ragged rasp. Some who choose to change their appearance make a blood oath with this insect. It can change the host's face, and as recompense, the oath bug will eat the host's entire body when they die. Hearing his slow and quavering attempt to keep his voice steady, Mo Run held him tighter. Chu Wanning must have been kneeling for a very long time. He was cold all over. From the past life to the present, it was always Chu Wanning who was his lantern, his flame, keeping Mo Run's darkness at bay, giving him all the warmth he could. But now, as Mo Run held him, he felt like Chu Wanning was made of ice. He was so cold it twisted Mo Run's heart with pain. I'm here. I'm here. He asked me to come to Dragonblood Mountain long ago. Chu Wanning sounded drained, as if all his heat and blood had been replaced with endless agony. He knew I wouldn't talk to him, or let him explain, so he left me a letter. It was sincere, but I was so stubborn. I refused to see him. I doubted his intentions. Mo Run stroked his cheek. He'd never seen Chu Wanning like this, not even in the past life. How could he not be worried? What happened? But Chu Wanning only hollowly said, I doubted him. This man, who'd ever been calm and rational, had finally fallen apart like the snapped string of a bow. He shook in Mo Run's arms, trembling uncontrollably, entirely wretched. Chu Wanning was curled up and hunched over. When someone who'd been strained to tautness half their life broke down, the accumulated sorrow was enough to destroy anyone. I should have come earlier. If only I'd listened to him. So much of this would have happened. Nengdongse wouldn't have died. Shimei wouldn't have been blinded. It wasn't too late. It wasn't too late. Shazin. If I'd taken that letter seriously, we wouldn't have ended up like this. It took long minutes for Mo Run to calm him down, and longer after that for Chu Wanning's tears to dry up. He stared ahead, glassy-eyed. Mo Run squeezed his fingers but found he couldn't warm them, just as he couldn't stop him from shaking. Why didn't I trust him? At least just once more. Mo Run listened in silence. After the appearance of Emperor Taishun, he'd envisioned countless ways his reunion with Chu Wanning might go. On the way here, he'd come up with every sort of explanation and entreaty, but he didn't need any of them. He'd never expected that when they met again, it would be like this. He left a memory scroll. Eventually, Chu Wanning recovered his composure. Mo Run stroked his face, his freezing cheeks. Before he'd passed, he'd hoped to hand it to you personally. Mo Run's hand stilled. A memory scroll. What could be inside? How much did Master Huizui know? He felt his own fingertips freezing. His hair stood on end. He was chilled to the bone. But he didn't have the chance, rasped Chu Wanning. His time was up. Admitting it seemed to prod a terrible wound for him. Grimacing, he fell silent, as though saying any more would break him entirely. He covered his face with his arm, gathering up the coolness, reliability, and steadiness he'd left scattered across the ground. Slowly, he put those fragments back in place. He'd never been accustomed to vulnerability. Chu Wanning lifted teary phoenix eyes and produced the scroll, placing it in Mo Run's hands. It contains all the secrets he knew. Mo Run found his words after long hesitation. His voice shook imperceptibly. Did he show you its contents, too? He did. Mo Run shuddered in his core. As he gazed into Chu Wanning's eyes, a terrifying realization rose in his mind. Chu Wanning already knew everything. His fingers closed around the jade scroll, but unease flooded him. He clutched Chu Wanning's fingers, caressing them. Wanning, he hesitated. If that man on Mount Jiao, if everything he said was real, would you hate me? Chu Wanning's pale face became even more so. His lips were tinged with green. Would you hate me? Mo Run gripped his hand hard, with an almost brutal force and stubbornness. In complete contrast was the piteous, pleading gaze beneath his soft lashes. Would you? Chu Wanning shook his head and made no reply. He closed his eyes. Just look at the scroll. The yin energy on Master Huizui's scroll was remarkably strong. It was nothing like mortal implements, but bore a stronger resemblance to the feathered tribe's illusion world in Peach Blossom Springs. Mo Run gazed at Chu Wanning once more, then unfurled the scroll and brought the glowing jade to his brow. Dragonblood Mountain vanished around him. In its place was endless darkness, and in that darkness Huizui's voice rang out. It echoed in Mo Run's ears, filled with regret. Chu Zongsha, Mo Shiju, this old monk knows his time is short. I strive to convey what little I know to you both. The world faces impending calamity. If I do not do all that I can, This old monk won't be able to bear the shame, even in hell. The voice faded, then swelled again. The past events contained in this scroll are every one unbelievable. They include this old monk's past misdeeds. Nothing is hidden. I've spent much of my life in sin and ignorance, with a narrow mind and stupid thoughts. In these 200 years of purposeless life, the days when my eyes were clear were paltry, and my good deeds pitifully few. All of my life I've borne my sins with no hope of atonement. And after death I will sink into the infinite hells with no possibility of reincarnation. But still I dare hope that after the two of you see this, you won't scorn this old monk as no better than a beast. Light appeared before Moran's eyes. Blinking, he saw the ruins of a city, surrounded by shriveled trees and dark-winged crows, the birds picking at the eyes and innards of corpses. He paused, finding the scene familiar, yet not recalling where he'd seen it. A group of soldiers on horseback rode in through the gates, ribbons at their brows and quivers on their backs. One of the young men yanked on the reins and tumbled off the back of his skinny steed, rushing toward one of the corpses at the gate. "Dad!" he screamed. "Dad!" Stunned, Moran felt a chill at the back of his neck. Was this the feathered tribe's illusion from Peach Blossom Springs? The war-torn city of ancient Linan? That's the end of the chapter. Um, uh, we're on page 289 for chapter 237, which is called Sacred Tree. So all right, I keep grabbing the lemonade from my friend Mike. Keep grabbing it with the wrong hand, which makes me smack the mic. Apologies. My brain has melted out of my ears a long time ago. Unlike the illusion from Peach Blossom Springs, Moran wasn't physically present in this one. He was only an invisible bystander. He walked up among the soldiers and looked down at the youth sobbing over the corpse. Moran felt a vein throb in his forehead. Cold seemed to seep into his bones, and goosebumps broke out over his skin. Looking upon this scene for the second time, he knew full well what role the youth before him had played in those tragic events in Linan. He had betrayed the governor's son, Chu Shun, to bring his adoptive father back to life, letting the entire city be slaughtered in the process. Xiaoman. He's gone. He's not coming back. Pull yourself together, all right? It's not safe here. We should go. No, I'm not going anywhere. I want Daddy. He died because he left the city to find food for me. It's my fault. Daddy? Moran watched him. Who was he? Wiseway's father, or... Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of Xiaoman's left hand. There was a dark mole between his thumb and forefinger, about the size of a grain of rice. Wiseway had a mole on his hand, too, in this exact same spot, identical in size and shape. Moran went rigid with shock. Sorry. I had to pin something real quick. All right. At the same time, a distant voice sighed in his ears. I was born in Linan and grew up an orphan. A groom in the governor's employ took me in and raised me as his own. When I was 14, the heavenly rift to the ghost realm opened, and Linan was besieged. Our family ran out of rations, and I was starving. Despite the danger, my adoptive father went out to look for food, but by nightfall he hadn't returned. Impossible. Huize was Xiaoman from 200 years ago? By the time I found him outside the city gates, the ghosts had killed him. Huize continued softly. His stomach had been torn open and the crows had pecked out his eyes. I'll never forget that sight as long as I live. Head buzzing, Mo-Run followed Xiaoman into the city. Back then, Linan had been beset by ghosts and demons after the heavenly rift opened, and the Ghost King had tempted the citizens to give up Chushun. The events were still as tragic and deplorable as the first time Mo-Run had seen them unfold. The night before the calamity, he watched Xiaoman beg the townspeople not to dismember his father's body. He implored the head steward to wait until Chushun returned to see if Chushun might know a way to keep his father's corpse intact. Please, just let me wait a little bit longer until the Gongja comes back. I'll keep an eye on his body, I promise. If his corpse rises, I won't let it get away. Please, I'm begging you. You won't be able to do a thing to the corpse if it rises. Think of the consequences. No, don't dismember him. I beg you, don't dismember him. Xiaoman prostrated in the pouring rain, bashing his forehead against the ground until it bled. But in the end, the other residents yanked his father's body out of his arms. The steward dragged this corpse, which might reanimate at any moment, to the governor's residence, and a group crowded around it. Xiaoman couldn't see past their backs, but after a while he watched blood seeping under the crowd's feet, a wash of pink beneath the torrents of rain. I was selfish back then. I was heartbroken, and I blamed the townspeople for my loss. I betrayed Linan and became a servant of the Ghost King. I sought revenge. As Huize narrated, Mo-Run saw again those terrible scenes. He watched the mother devour her own child's heart, the citizens turn their backs on their hero. He saw Chushun kneeling on the steps of the city god temple, weeping with his back bowed. He watched the mob shove Chushun out of the temple like a flock of dark vultures. For the chance to prolong their own wretched lives, none hesitated to sacrifice Chushun's. He watched Chushun carve out his own heart and spiritual core, passing them into the hands of the wailing townspeople. He exhorted them to leave this place behind. Xiaoman, too, had witnessed it all. Later on, I went to the ghost realm. Whenever I was alone, I found myself thinking of Chu Gongja's miserable plight, how he had offered us his heart, how he had always shown us kindness. It ate away at me. More and more I was unable to escape my own guilt. Huize paused. When he next spoke, his voice was steeped in bitterness. I was a traitor. Mo-Run couldn't say what he felt. Sometimes a split second was all the difference between good and evil. For some, regret came in the instant after the knife fell, but what good was that? They'd already passed the point of no return. Not long after, I heard Chushun's souls had entered the underworld. He was a good man, although his cultivation wasn't sufficient to ascend to immortality. It was enough to ensure his next life would be comfortable and peaceful, should he enter the cycle of reincarnation. But he didn't. The tragedy in Linan had left the souls of his wife and child scattered and lost. He begged Yanlo himself for succor, offering up his next 3 lives of good fortune in exchange for their deliverance, but it was nowhere near so straightforward. In the illusionscape, Mo-Run saw Huize rushing about in the ghost realm. Out of shame and guilt, he carefully avoided Chushun, but he pulled aside all the guards and workers he came across, asking for any information they would give him. What happened to the wife and child? Did Yanlo say anything? Is it possible to piece their souls back together so they can enter the cycle of reincarnation? Can you think of a way, please? I'm begging you to help Chushun Gongja. Name any price, I'll discuss it, no matter how high it might be. One of the ghost minions had sneered. I've heard all about your great deeds. Weren't you the one who went over to the 9th Ghost King and killed Chushun's entire family? Why the sudden change of heart? Are you afraid Chushun's ghost will seek you out for revenge? Mo Run walked behind Huizui and watched him kneel to many people in entreaty. Or, to be more accurate, many ghosts. But oftentimes, living people and ghosts were no different in nature. It was just as Chu Wanning had once said. Reincarnation might change many things about a soul, their personality, interests, or temper, but their fundamental nature remained the same. I swear to fucking God, if this is going where I think this is going. It didn't take long for the 9th king to hear of Huizui's interest in Chushun's family. The king already bore a deep grudge toward Chushun for taking out his eye. After learning that his subordinate Xiaoman was meddling in the Chu family's reincarnation behind his back, the king flew into a rage. He stripped Huizui of the token that allowed him to come and go from the ghost realm as he pleased, banishing him to the world of the living. In the same stroke, Huizui lost the eternal lifespan enjoyed by the ghost realm's underlings. Get your ass back to the mortal realm. Once the yin energy of the underworld dissipates from your body, you'll die, and your souls will fall into the infinite hells. They'll be tormented for all eternity there without reincarnation. The 9th Ghost King fixed his one good eye on Huizui. Thinking you could conspire against me with your old master, this is what you get. The underworld's darkness lightened. Mo Run heard the gentle patter of rain. It was springtime, and new leaves glistened green in the drizzle. He saw Huizui, now a monk with a shaven head, making his way through the rain. When I returned to the world of the living, 100 years had passed. Although the Ghost King had taken away my token, I still had yin energy on me. Around midnight, when the yin energy was most concentrated, this was enough to allow me to return to the ghost realm from time to time. But it sapped my strength if I stayed more than a night. In truth, I was still very frightened of death, and didn't dare remain in the ghost realm for long. I only went back when I had no other way of gathering information or assistance. Mo Run watched Huizui walk through a bamboo forest alone, tapping a rough-hewn staff against the ground. Through snow-dusted plum blossoms, through rain-laden lotuses, his solitary figure stepped onward. From the flourishing heights of spring to the frosted depths of winter, he wore out pair after pair of hemp-cloth shoes. Huizui searched far and wide for any records that might hold clues to restoring the mother and child he had ruined. This was my opportunity to atone for some of my sins, said Huizui. Others might have felt nothing at these words. They might have found Huizui laughable. But Mo Run's eyes welled with tears. Atonement. Anyone who'd ever done wrong, who'd ever sought to repent, would yearn for atonement like a fish yearned for water. He and Huizui were no exception. Neither of them was a good person. Their hands were laved in blood. With every step they trod upon shattered skulls. How could they atone for what they had done? Using those hands that had committed slaughter, they could guide what remained of their lives onto the righteous path, but would that negate the sins they had committed? If only the mortal world could be divided cleanly into right and wrong. If only karmic reward and retribution were just. If only things could be so simple. But he knew it wasn't so. I walked the mortal realm for another century. Huizui's voice was slow and sighing. Wherever I went, I sought to relieve what hardship I came across. I knew no matter how many good deeds I performed, I was powerless to change my fate. I looked forward to endless torment after my death. I only wanted to lessen the weight in my heart. If the Gongjo were still in the world, I thought that surely he would partake of the sufferings and worries of others. Snatches of these 100 years flowed by in the vision. Mo-run saw Huizui carrying a blind orphan on his back, walking through a mountain forest. He saw Huizui toiling in a rice paddy, head bent low. He saw him mending his worn robes beneath the light of a single candle, having given all his money to rebuild a village ravaged by evil spirits. Chugongja never reincarnated. Once I broke off a branch from a high-tongue tree in full bloom. I remembered high-tongue blossoms had been his and his wife's favorite flowers. I summoned all my courage and, in a moment of delusion, went to see him in the ghost realm. The result was a foregone conclusion. He threw me out and told me never to return. Huizui stood in one of the ghost realm's alleyways, his figure small and slight, his back already faintly stooped. I didn't dare harass him further, and so that visit was my last. But he kept that high-tongue branch. I thought perhaps he was still fond of this relic of the living realm that had no match in the underworld. I continued to pick high-tongue blossoms and entrusted them to others to bring to him. I hoped they might soften his hatred toward me, if only the tiniest bit. Later, I heard Madame Chu's souls could be repaired with time, but the souls of the child were scattered beyond saving. Even if one scoured the highest heavens and sifted through the yellow springs, there would never again be another little Chugongja. After I learned of this, I was overwhelmed with guilt and regret. Until one day, I came upon something in my travels. A misty river on a moonlit spring night came into view. Huizui sat in a small boat, surrounded by the winking lanterns of fishing vessels, their scattered light glancing off an object in his hands. Mo-run stepped up to Huizui and took a seat next to him. From here he could see Huizui was holding a peculiar-looking piece of wood. An ordinary tree would have rough bark and fine whorls. This had neither. It was no wider than a man's palm, covered in smooth, delicate bark that gleamed subtly. Even in the illusion, Mo-run seemed to catch the light fragrance emanating from it. The Flame Emperor's sacred tree. Mo-run drew in a breath, eyes flying wide as he stared at the luminous object in Huizui's hand. This was from the Flame Emperor's sacred tree. According to legend, this tree grew in the farthest reaches of the East Sea, which no human could reach. After 2 lifetimes traveling throughout every corner of the Jianghu, of course Mo-run had heard of the Flame Emperor's sacred tree. It was said this tree could bring the dead back to life and produce artifacts mightier than any ordinary holy weapon. Its influence could even help commoners ascend, allowing them to bypass the suffering of reincarnation to walk among immortals. Huizui evidently knew these tales as well. The sacred tree possesses its own spirit, he explained softly. If one refined its wood into their own spiritual core, they would soon reach ascendance. If so, I would never have to face the torments of hell. Mo-run suddenly recalled a rumor he'd heard about Huizui, that he had rejected the summons of the heavens and chosen to remain in the mortal realm. Could it be that he had failed in his efforts to refine the Flame Emperor's sacred tree? I had a very strong urge to put this piece of the sacred tree toward my own ends. For a period of time, I thought it had come into my possession by the grace of the heavens, as a sign I wasn't meant to suffer in the underworld. On the boat, Huizui ran his fingers over the wood. Yearning flashed through his eyes, followed in turns by indecision. The voice echoing in Mo-run's ears, too, was racked with turmoil. However, there was something else I had once read in an ancient text. That the Flame Emperor's sacred tree had the same properties as Nua's clay. This piece of wood could be used to create a living person. That's the end of the chapter. We have one more chapter left today. Um, it's not long, or it's kind of long. I think, hang on. Like 10 pages we could possibly finish before. Uh-huh. All right. Okay. We're on page 297 for chapter 238, which is called Soulless. All right. Are we holding hands? I feel like we should be holding hands. I sure as shit need to be holding someone's hand right now. So if you could do me a favor, real quick, just prayer circle. Let's, yeah. What? Morun blurted, reeling back. If not for the fact that he was an apparition, he might have already stumbled into the nets of the fishing vessel next to them. The Flame Emperor's sacred tree could be used to construct a person. Nua's clay, Fushi's chin, and the Flame Emperor's tree are the three holy instruments the deities used to create the world. Their spiritual energy is pure beyond measure. The first immortals, with all their limitless power, were made from these instruments. I had obtained only a tiny portion of the Flame Emperor's tree, but even without a deity's awesome strength, I could easily create a person out of it. In the end, I made up my mind. Just as Neja's teacher reconstructed the god's body from lotus roots after his death, I would carve this piece of wood into the likeness of the young Chugongja. Morun felt the world was spinning before his eyes. Huizui would carve this wood into the young Chugongja, into Chulan. I wanted to give my savior back his son. Morun's throat was dry, as though something was lodged in it. After a long pause, he muttered, "Impossible." Within the memory scroll, the evening bell tolled. Wubei Temple was cloaked in the red of sunset. Weary crows had returned to their nests, and monks passed beneath the colonnades with the sleeves of their loose robes floating behind them. Master Huizui sat in one of the rooms within the monastery, the door and windows securely shut. In the pale glow of an oil lamp beneath the shadow of the Buddha, he whittled with painstaking care. He knew every cut would be impossible to undo. Before touching the wood of the sacred tree, he'd carved hundreds of models, practicing until his creations looked exactly like the Chulan he remembered. On this night, he finally held the wood of the sacred tree in his hands. After looking over it carefully a last time, he made the first cautious and considered cut. Wood shavings drifted down, coating the floor in golden dust. He poured all of himself into each stroke of the knife, envisioning those two figures from his past. 100 years of memories ebbed and flowed beneath the knife. The old monk's head hung low, as though the weight of his sins had snapped his neck long ago. I entered seclusion within the temple. It took me 5 years to finish carving Chulan. Morun walked stiffly over to Huizui as the monk set down the knife. He had made his final cut. He brushed away the last specks of bright dust. Huizui touched the wooden child's face and clothes with shaking hands. Tears ran down his face as he knelt, kowtowing to it over and over. Morun turned his stunned gaze to the small sculpture on the tea table. Its tiny form was carved from the sacred tree, using a blade animated by guilt. It looked just like Chuaning had as a child. The evening bell began to toll once more. Only a blood-red thread still stretched between the earth and sky. The last ray of dusky light passed through the window and landed on the table. The low tones of the bell echoed through the temple grounds. Elsewhere in the monastery, the monks were burning cypress boughs and pine needles. A note of cool sharpness cut through the rich fragrance of wood smoke. Sitting in this hall as the bell sounded its final note, surrounded by twilight serenity, Huizue gazed upon the wooden figure and murmured in a stroke of inspiration, "I'll call you Chu Wanning. Wanning. Evening peace." He bit his fingertip to draw blood. A single red drop, replete with metal elemental spiritual energy, fell onto the wood, and a flash of brilliant light flooded the room. Mo-Run shut his eyes against the radiance, his lashes trembling. He squinted toward the light, trying to see what was happening, but between the tears blurring his vision and the blinding brightness, he couldn't make out a thing. When the light grew so brilliant he was forced to close his eyes again, Mo-Run's one wild thought was that Chu Wanning had already seen all of this. How much pain had it caused him? He wasn't human. He had no parents to speak of. He was nothing but a chunk of wood and a drop of blood. He had spent more than 3 decades upon this earth, wholly in the dark about his origins. The wood of the sacred tree retained its own spiritual energy. After I gave my sculpture life with a drop of blood, it looked like Chulan in every respect, just as I'd hoped. I raised him in the monastery and taught him as my disciple. As he grew older, he began to ask me about his origins. Mo-Run saw Chu Wanning as a child, sitting beside Huizue with a stick of red tangaloo. Shizun, Shizun, you always say you found me in the snow and brought me back here. But where exactly did you find me? Huizue was gazing at the cool shadows of the mountains in the distance. After a lengthy pause, his reply came like a sigh. Linan. So I'm from Linan? But I've never left the monastery. I don't know what Linan is like. Chu Wanning looked dismayed. Shizun, I want to go down the mountain and see the outside. I want to see Linan. The illusion darkened, and the courtyards of Wubei Temple were replaced with the lush scenery of Jiangnan. It was June, and the fragrant lotus flowers stood tall and vivid against the green and blue of the water. Chu Wanning, still a head shorter than Xia Xini, was skipping down a paved bluestone path. Huizue followed a few steps behind him. Wanning, slow down. Be careful not to trip. Chu Wanning turned and flashed his teacher a smile. Mo-Run had never seen such an innocent and carefree expression on his face. Okay, I'll listen to Shizun. The child wore a dusty green monk's robe. His head wasn't shaved. He wore his hair coiled in a little bun, and the lotus leaf was perched atop his head. The drops of dew glistening on the leaf made his face look all the purer and brighter. This feels like a good, appropriate place to show you this. That's what I've been staring at for about half a page now. Huizue caught up to Chu Wanning and took his hand. All right, now you've seen West Lake. Where do you want to go to next? Can we eat? In that case, Huizue paused. Let's go into the city. The pair entered the city hand in hand, Mo Run keeping pace beside them. As he watched Chu Wanning, crowned with a lotus leaf, head barely rising to Mo Run's thigh, Mo Run's heart swelled with pain and tenderness. He extended a hand. He knew he couldn't touch the illusion, but he couldn't stop himself from reaching out to pat Chu Wanning on the head. At the same moment, Chu Wanning stopped in his tracks. What's wrong? Huizui asked gently. Chu Wanning tilted his face up. His eyes, like twin pools of sweet dew in the sunlight, landed unerringly on Mo Run. Mo Run froze in astonishment, pulse pounding in his ears. He knew Chu Wanning couldn't possibly be looking at him, yet a quiet frisson of excitement rippled through him. What's that? Chu Wanning let go of Huizui's hand and walked toward Mo Run. Mo Run's anguish compounded. He'd never seen Chu Wanning so cheerful, nor his eyes so bright. He found himself leaning down and opening his arms to embrace this child. But Chu Wanning stepped right through him. Mo Run blinked, then turned. Chu Wanning was making for a pastry stall behind him. Head tilted to see over the counter, he watched the stall-keeper open a bamboo steamer to reveal the pale pink, flower-shaped cakes wreathed in steam. Mo Run let out a breath of relief, but his heart sank ever so slightly. So it had been a coincidence, nothing more. He followed Huizui to the stall. Chu Wanning was smiling up at his teacher. Shizun, these cakes look so yummy. Do you want to try one? Can I? Surprise flitted across Huizui's expression. You both have the same taste. Chu Wanning's eyes widened. Who has the same taste? He asked innocently. Huizui pressed his lips together. Nothing. Just someone I used to know. He bought 3 sticky rice flour cakes. He watched, pensive, as Chu Wanning took a bite, rising vapor blurring the child's face. The river of his memories crashed and surged around him. Huizui sighed, letting his eyes fall shut. After a moment, he felt a sudden tug on his sleeve. He looked down to find that Chu Wanning had split one of the cakes into halves, the sweet and fragrant bean paste filling gently steaming in the air. Half for Shizun, half for me. The bigger half is Shizun's. Why is the bigger half mine? You're taller than me, so you need to eat more. Am I just obliterated, which is a very strong possibility, or has he said something similar to Mo Run? Have I imagined that? I'm imagining that. Right. Mo Run looked on as Huizui took half the cake and stood with Chu Wanning next to the pastry stall. Shiasini said that too. Thank you, love. Yeah. Uh-huh. Mo Run looked on as Huizui took half the cake and stood with Chu Wanning next to the pastry stall, eating and chatting. Beneath the bright Linon sun, Mo Run stilled for a moment, and a smile stole across his face. His heart ached horribly, yet it also seemed to melt. No one, he thought, could feel anything but tender fondness towards this young Chu Wanning. He was the sweetest kid in the world. The sun-dappled streets of Linon faded. This time, no other scene took its place. Mo Run heard Huizui speak in the darkness, his faraway voice like the whispers of a wandering spirit. I spent all my days with him, teaching him to read and write, schooling him in scripture and philosophy, but my main focus was his spiritual development. I never forgot that I had created this child in order to give him back to my Savior. From the beginning, I resolved to bring Chu Wanning to the ghost realm as soon as his spiritual powers and physical form were mature enough to withstand it. A pause. Huizui's voice was lower and graver when he continued. I would bring him to the ghost realm and fused the remnant fragments of Chulan's souls into his body. Morun's mouth fell open. Huazui's voice was hoarse. At the time, I never thought this would be wrong. What was Chuaning? He wasn't a real human. He was just a piece of wood, a hand-carved figurine. I had given him life and taught him the ways of humankind. But ultimately, the blood that flowed in his veins was not real blood, and the flesh that covered his bones was not real flesh. At these words, Morun could no longer contain his mounting despair. "That's not true," he cried. But what use were these words? Huazui couldn't hear his furious shout of denial. The monk's voice swirled about him, tugging him deeper into a maelstrom of pain. Chuaning was unnecessary. He wasn't alive. He didn't have a soul. "No, that's not true. Why wouldn't the sacred tree have a soul? He's alive. He has his own souls. He isn't anyone else. He's not like anyone else." Morun howled, trapped within the illusion like a caged beast. "Huazui, you raised him yourself. You watched him grow up. How is he not human? How is he any different from you or me?" But Huazui continued murmuring, flat and affectless, as though he were chanting sutras before the Buddha. Who knew if his lips shaped the words out of true devotion or to numb the pain that lanced through his own heart? He was merely a vessel I carved for Chulan. He would only become a complete human with Chulan's souls inside him. Morun felt chilled to the bone. He had no idea what would come next. He felt like he was on the verge of losing his mind. He broke into a run, but there was nowhere to go. Nothing but abyssal darkness. His repetitive murmurs became desperate shouts. "No, you can't ruin him. Huazui, there are souls in his body. He's a living person, a human being." He fell to his knees, gripped by a terror that far outweighed his fear of the past life coming to light. He was so afraid he might see Huazui bring Chuaning to the ghost realm, cut open his chest, and merge Chulan's souls into his body. But what about the original Chuaning? The souls that belonged to the sacred tree would be forced out. He was just a block of wood. As the wheel of karma spun on, where would he go? Whether to the heavens above or to the netherworld below, whether amidst the high clouds or down among the yellow springs, what place would take him in? "No, Huazui, you can't." Morun was shaking, his lips bloodless. "You can't." How could he not have a soul? How could he not be human? This child had skipped through the streets with a smile and a green lotus leaf on his head. He had carefully broken the flour cake in two and given the larger share to his shizin. He was still so little, yet he was already more compassionate and spirited than many. He was no less alive than any other creature of flesh and blood. How could he not be human? But no matter how Morun begged and shouted, his words couldn't reach Huazui's ears. The debt Huazui thought he owed to Chushun's family had preoccupied him for 100 years. He had gone through countless trials to craft this vessel. How could he possibly let it go? Day by day, Chuaning grew. Since he was to be the instrument of Chulan's rebirth, I worried for his safety and health far more than I worried about my own. Other than the time I brought him to Linan for a few months when he was 5 or 6, he was never allowed to step outside Wubei Temple. Huazui heaved a sigh. Sometimes I wondered if I was depriving him of the sights and sounds of the world. Up until he was 14, he'd never been anywhere besides Linan. All he knew of the heavens and earth, the changing of the seasons, was from what he saw within the confines of the monastery. At last the illusion brightened again to show a moonlit night. Morun saw Huazui standing in the doorway of a temple, gazing out into the courtyard. He hurried over. In the frosty moonlight, Morun saw the 14-year-old Chuaning practicing with his sword, high-tongue blossoms swirling around him. In his white robes, wreathed in silvery light and bright petals, he was an ethereal sight. Huizui went on, and his words mingled in Mo-Run's ears with the sharp strokes of the sword through the air. But I also thought it might not be such a bad thing for him to know less. After all, the world was a cruel place. If this spirit of the sacred tree wouldn't live for much longer than a decade before Chulon replaced him, wouldn't it be a kindness if his life was easy and straightforward, if he remained oblivious to the mortal realm's suffering? The dancing sword stilled, and fragmented flowers floated down. Calm and alert, Chu Wanning brought the blade behind his back and lifted his other hand, index and middle fingers raised. He caught his breath and looked up. Upon seeing Huizui's eyes on him, he broke into a smile. The night wind tugged at the wisps of hair at his temples, tickling him. He tried to gently blow them off his face, to no avail. At last he reached up to brush them aside. Pitch-dark phoenix eyes curved into gentle crescents as he gazed at Huizui and Mo-Run at his side. "Shizin?" Good work." Huizui nodded. "Come, let me check the development of your spiritual core." Guilelessly, Chu Wanning walked over. Brushing back his snow-white sleeve, he held his wrist out to Huizui. Huizui felt for his spiritual energy flow and said, "It's already very strong, just not very stable. Keep practicing. You can make much progress before winter." Chu Wanning grinned. "Thank you, Shizin." Mo-Run couldn't be sure, but he thought he saw Huizui's shoulders tremble minutely at these words. Yet Huizui didn't say anything further. He neither explained nor amended his words. He merely turned and went back inside. Mo-Run didn't move a muscle. He was no longer interested in following Huizui. He only wanted to watch Chu Wanning. With a greedy hunger, with a desperate urgency, he only wanted to drink in the sight of this youth who might disappear at any moment. He was so pure and pristine, so kind and gentle. How could a child like this not have a soul? His gaze flicked down, landing by chance on Chu Wanning's chest as it rose and fell beneath his white lapels. Suddenly, he remembered something. It came like a clap of thunder, like a boulder landing on his chest, sending waves crashing to shore. No. He stumbled back a step, but what good was that? His memories had already extended their fearsome talons and pierced his steaming entrails. Chu Wanning had a scar on his chest. His chest had been opened up. Mo-Run was shaking. Before his eyes, Chu Wanning's sword danced beneath the moon, his footsteps light upon the flying flowers, a gallant sight. But Mo-Run felt like he had swallowed a bucket of ice water in a gulp. His heart palpitated with chills. Chu Wanning's chest had been cut open. So Huizui had done it after all. He had brought Chu Wanning to the ghost realm and fused Chulon's remnant souls into Chu Wanning's heart. So then, the original Chu Wanning was already long gone. So then, Mo-Run brought his arms over his head, curling into a ball on the ground. He shuddered and didn't dare finish the thought. His heart hurt so much. He wished he could have been the one to have his heart carved out, to have his souls torn away. Chu Wanning. He was so good. Why did he have to suffer such a cruel fate? To be deemed less than human, to have his creator treat him as a lifeless, empty shell, born for the sole purpose of sustaining the life of another. Who was the man Mo-Run had chosen as his Shizin? Was he Chulon or Chu Wanning? Mo-Run felt his sanity slipping. His head throbbed painfully, and he felt dizzy and nauseated. He had no idea how long he sat there for. Eventually, the sky dimmed. The monastery and the flowering tree disappeared. Chu Wanning, too, faded away. Huizui's voice flowed out of the darkness. After Chu Wanning turned 14, the time was ripe for my plan. I decided that at the end of the year, I would bring him to the ghost realm and merge him with Chu Lan's souls. That's the end of the chapter. It's past 6. So, I'm gonna go. Because my brain is empty. It's gone. There's nothing left. I will be here on Thursday. Who the fuck won Captive Prince? Cry Scary 494 won this copy of the first book of the Captive Prince trilogy. So if you're around, drop me a DM somewhere. Tumblr, Patreon, Blue Sky. Gaywatch has a Blue Sky as well. And I'll get that to you. Meantime, I'm gonna go. And we have the book chat this Thursday at 2:15 to discuss this. Maybe. If I can wrap my head around things. Which is a big if. But I'm going to try. For YouTube members and patrons. 2:15 on Thursday. If you wanna join us for that. And then at 3, we're gonna finish this fuck-ass volume. Okay? Okay. I'm going. I love you. Go zone out for a while. And I'll see you on Thursday. Please take care of yourself.